morning. Love this Jersey day because I get to flaunt it in front of all of you for another 20, 30 minutes. This is really good. So if you're a hater out there, the Cowboys, deal with it. That's how we roll here. I'm glad you're here today. This is a good series that we're in, especially, I don't know about you, but in the times that we live in right now, these days, there seems to be just a lot of anger. I know that anger has always been, but it just seems the days we're living in right now, it's hostile. It's hostile. People are just tilting a lot easier, you know. I remember here, I don't know, a few months ago or whenever it was, I was in a parking lot at a grocery store, and I'm backing out of my parking spot, and I just got a little Cooper, so it's, I guess, not easy for everybody to see. I'm pulling out, and this dude whips around the corner, and he just about slams into me, coming into me, and he, slams on his brakes, and then he lays on the horn, like I could, I'm backing out of my spot. And then he pulls out, and he comes up next to me, and my windows are rolled down, and his are rolled down, and he's like, "Catch you, fill in the blank. Blink, 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 drive, what's the matter with you?" And my windows are down, and I'm caught off guard, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I don't really know. I tell him, "It's gonna be okay." "You're all right. It's okay. Just breathe. This is, in the scheme of life, this is really small right now, this moment here." I didn't go into an explanation, but telling him it's going to be okay. It's just hostile. Do you remember what it was like a couple weeks leading up to the presidential election? Did you go on Facebook at that time? And it's just, you're just like, I'm out of here. It's just craziness. And so we want to look at how do we have joy even when there's conflicts, even when there's hostility, even when there's all this stuff that's going around. And we've got a theme verse for it. And I'll remind you, because last week I said it too, but just be careful as we read this verse not to think it's just some platitude or some trite little simplistic saying that has no relevancy to reality. It does. Sometimes the most profound things in life are the simplest things in life. So let's look at this verse right here, and let's read it out loud together. You ready? Okay, here we go. "Always be full of joy in the Lord. I say it again, rejoice." All right, so last week we looked at the difference between joy and happiness. Happiness being something that's affected by the external, joy being something that's abiding and is internally. It's internal. It comes from within, and it's abiding presence of God. There is a certain art to living, a way to live life where we can have that presence of joy in our lives. We may not always get the goosebumps and feel all that, but we can have joy, a sustainable joy in our lives. So we're looking at the book of Philippians, and just to recount what this is, it's a guy named Paul. If you were raised Catholic, you know him as the Apostle Paul. And he wrote this letter to a church in Philippi, to a group of followers of Jesus in Philippi. Very short book, and pretty much the theme of the book is all about joy. And people at this time, Christians at this time, had went through a lot of hardships. And so he's writing to them about joy, and this is one of the things he says here in chapter 2. "Is there any encouragement from belonging to Christ? Any comfort from his love? Any fellowship together in the Spirit? Are your hearts tender and compassionate?" And he's asking a question that he knows the answer to. It's like, yeah, Jesus has done that for me. He's made that difference in my life. So he wants to remind them, and then he's like, okay, in light of that, then make me truly happy by agreeing wholeheartedly with each other, loving one another, and working together with one mind and purpose. So in other words, he's saying, okay, if Jesus has really touched your life, and he's changed your life, and he's done this for you, here's how that plays out. Be wholeheartedly, or agree wholeheartedly with each other, love each other, and be of one mind. Work together, have one mind and one purpose. Here's the point. How we deal with one another determines the quality of our lives and the joy that we experience this way. How we do this way. And somebody may be saying, well, how many of you would like to have a little bit more joy and less conflict in relationships? And you think, yep, I signed up for that. But you might be thinking, you don't know who I have to go to work with every day, right? Well, here's what I got to say. You ought to see the knuckleheads I got to work with here on staff every day. I mean, I know Guy looks nice and everything and friendly, but no, he's not. We all have circumstances. There's going to be conflict as long as there's humanity. We're going to have that. But it doesn't have to be such a big part of our lives. And so we want to look at some keys that we could pull from this letter of Paul to the church in Philippi and see what can we do to maintain, to have joy. First one, you can write it down in your outline. We find joy, it's so important, we find joy in unity, not uniformity. I don't understand why, but we seem to have convinced ourselves that in order to experience unity, you got to think and be like me. And that's just crazy. It's like, I need you to have the same opinions or believe on the same issues, believe what I believe, have the same political leanings and vote for who I would vote for us to have unity. It's not this, we are so diverse as human beings. We are uniquely created. Everything about you is so it's radically different from any other person on the planet. Everything about us, our experiences make us unique. Our beliefs make us unique. Our genetics make us unique. Our personality, our taste buds, our preferences, our sense of humor, everything about you is very unique to you. It might have similarities with other people. That's always cool. But you are uniquely fashioned, everything about you. And that's a wonderful thing. So the unity that we're talking about, or as this passage says it, to agree wholeheartedly, does not necessitate uniformity. It necessitates respect and an understanding that people are different. I mean, my wife and I, we don't agree on everything. She's wrong about plenty of things in our life. I mean, babe, stand up for just a second. Just look what she's sporting right now. This is rebellion in the home. This is going on here. We are, So we don't have identical views on everything political or everything, social or movies, food, we don't. But the things that matter most, we do. Like our marriage, our children, our faith, parenting, these kind of things, yeah, we're tied. But there's not a demand where you have to be this way and I have to be this way. We have to think just the same on all these different issues. That's called control. When relationships are that way, there's no safety to be you, they grow contentious and manipulative to try to get somebody to be like you in order for you to be okay. We're uniquely different. The church, in my opinion, has not done a great job modeling this, especially in the past. But even many churches still to today, where you have to think like I think. You come in and then now you really need to dress this way, you need to think this way, you need to talk this way, you need to vote this way, you need to have these opinions on parenting, and this is what marriage looks like, and all these things like this. And it seems to have been more of a focus on conforming people as opposed to people really getting converted. Conforming them instead of loving them. That's why we have that saying around here that we mean. It's part of our DNA. It's part of our culture. You can belong before you believe. I was meeting with a friend yesterday, and he's a part of this church, and he came in here, this last year, started attending the church and stuff like that, not a follower of Christ, but he just liked being in the services. And so we were talking, we just had to get together, we had some coffee. I was like, how's it going? And he was telling me about what he feels like God is doing in his life. And it was really cool. And he's like, at one point he said, I can't wrap my mind around, this, and this. I don't know how to make that connection. I'm like, that's all right. Look where you were a year ago. And look how you're talking. You're talking about how you love God. I'm like, just be you. And so he doesn't agree with everything that I believe. He's still a greeter at our door. He's still a part of our family. And I believe that the Holy Spirit continues to change. See, it's the Holy Spirit's job to convince. He does that. We sow seed. We water seed. He does the convincing. We don't have to. So even relationally, that's one of the best ways to have joy is to accept people right where they are, not where you want them to be. Of course we want them to experience God and know God in the way that we do, or whatever that is for you, or you want that person to be free of this or to behave this way because it'll better their lives. But the key to transformation like that in humility is to accept them right where they are. So in order to live that way, we got to look at another passage here. It says, when you do these things, or when you do things, do not let selfishness or pride be your guide. Instead, be humble and give more honor to others than to yourselves. Do not be interested only in your own life, but be interested in the lives of others. Humility. That's a word that conjures up different emotions, different perceptions. Like, what does it mean to be a humble person? And sometimes I think that word gets really misconstrued on what humility means. Write this down. We find joy in humility, not inferiority. Humility isn't manifested by you acting like you have no self-worth. That's not humility. That's narcissism in a very negative way. Not that there's a positive narcissism, but that's a very negative approach to thinking of what humility is, that I am somehow of less value and I am somehow of less importance. And that is completely opposite of what's true. When it says give more honor to those others than to yourself, listen, a person who can place higher honor on other people and prefer other people and do that from a right place is a person who is really well adjusted inside. They know who they are in Christ. So they have this high value. They know they're of value and of worth. And so therefore they're able to be humble and try to bring that out in other people and honor other people. And that's why it's so important to get our identity from God, because as we get it this way, we can give it that way. We could push other people up and we can honor other people. Now we're not using people to make us feel of value and us feel of worth. Because we get it this way, now we see part of our role of being humble so we can help others rise to a place of value. Others capture their true essence. I love it the way Rick Warren phrased it. Wonderful pastor, Saddleback Church down in Orange County. So true humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of yourself less. That just nailed it right there. We need to wrap it up and go home. That's it. That's what true humility is. You are a creation of remarkable, singular, priceless worth. You are. And to be humble doesn't deny that. To be humble means that you know that other people are too. And so we want to help raise them. Raise them. Look how Jesus modeled this. This is a passage I really love in Philippians chapter 2, 6 through 11. Explains how he approached this. Though he was God, he did not think of equality with God as something to cling to. Instead, he gave up his divine privileges. He took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being. When he appeared in human form, he humbled himself in obedience to God and died a criminal's death on a cross. And therefore, God elevated him to the place of highest honor and gave him the name above all other names, that at the name of Jesus, every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue declare that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. So Jesus, that's what he did. He humbled himself. He came to the earth and he humbled himself, and he humbled himself in obedience to God the Father. And because he took that posture, he was able to accomplish his purpose, which is to redeem mankind. And it's the same thing with us. As we humble ourselves, God can use us in ways that he can't, where all this pride and ego exists. This is one of the examples I see of this that is so remarkable is right at the end of Jesus' life. He knows his time is short. He's right at the end. It's 11:59. Clock's about to strike. He's about to go back to the Father. He's about to meet the cross. And he knows it. He knows. He came to do that. So he's got one last evening with his gang, with his boys, with his friends. We romanticize it, spiritualize it, call it, the Last Supper. It was dinner. He had dinner with his boys, and he broke bread. And you know how important it is if you've ever been with a loved one who's passed away, those last moments of conversation, it's real important what you say. You're going to remember. And so he knew exactly the last impression he wanted to have on these guys before he went back to the Father. And so what's he do? He has dinner with them. He breaks bread. He explains what he's about to do. And then this happens. Verse 2, John chapter 13. And supper being ended, the devil having already put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands and that he had come from God and was going to God, he rose from supper laid aside his garments, took a towel, girded himself, and after that he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel with which he was girded. He's so different from the kings of humanity. He came to serve. And here he is at the last moment. He wants to impress them with this. This is what it's all about. This is what it means to be a leader. This is what it means to be great among you. This is what it means how you relate to each other. He takes the towel and he says, I'm going to wash your feet. And even Peter, if you remember the story, he's like, no, you can't do that. It's like, it's got to happen, Pete. And so he does. And he's washing his disciples' feet, God incarnate. And you know whose feet were included in that? Judas. The one who's about to betray him. Turn him over for a few pieces of silver. And he didn't do it. You know Jesus didn't do it in a condescending way, like, you jerk, you see what, you know. He's reaching for him still. Judas, my betrayer. See, that's our Jesus. Humbles himself in such a way in order to bring out the best in others. He saw his mission as others focused. A self-focused, self-absorbed life, it's a perpetual reach and never really grasping. Always trying to fill that need. What do I need? I need this. I need you to be this for me. I need this and it'll make me happy. Always reaching, never having a grasp, never obtaining it. It's elusive. It comes when we live on mission of saying, I know I'm here and I may not always do it right. I may be selfish and I get that about myself. I know I am. But I know the mission here is to honor others and to prefer others and to go that way, because in doing that, it comes back. He builds us up. And so that's what we're called to do. Joy comes in losing oneself, not protecting oneself, losing oneself. And here's the final key. I want to read the passage before I give the fill-in, though, so I'm going to turn it a little around on you. Philippians chapter 2, verse 14, do everything without complaining and arguing. How many want to say, forget it, I give up. Do everything without complaining and arguing so that no one can criticize you. Live clean, innocent lives as children of God, shining like bright lights in a world full of crooked and perverse people. Hold firmly to the word of life. And then on the day of Christ's return, I'll be proud that I did not run this race in vain and that my work was not useless. But I will rejoice, even if I lose my life, pouring it out like a liquid offering to God. Just like your faithful service is an offering to God. And I want all of you to share that joy. Yes, you should rejoice, and I will share your joy. We find joy in living for God, not ourselves. That's the key, in pouring our lives out, not protecting. Paul is proposing that if we hold tightly to God and sacrifice our priorities for his, that we will experience joy. And it seems counterintuitive because we're trained in our mind and our culture and everything else, shaped to think, I got to take care of me. And God is saying, make me priority. A life that is lived for the glory of God, truly a life that is prioritized around living what brings him glory, is a life of you won't be able to escape joy. It will be your companion through life. That's how God fashioned us. A joy that we don't understand without a surrendered life. Not just a happiness that bases on circumstances. There was another contemporary of Paul's at that time, and his name was Peter. Paul and Peter had a sister named Mary. No, kidding. That was a funny joke in my mind. Some of you are way too young to even know what the point of that joke is right there. Anyways, Peter wrote a letter to a church that had been through a whole lot, and yet they had this poise, and they had this brilliance and life about them. And he describes them here, 1 Peter 1:8. Says, you love him even though you've never seen him. Though you do not see him, you trust him, and you rejoice with a glorious, inexpressible joy. He's saying, that's it. It's like, you got this. You've made him everything, and the result is look at that inexpressible joy and peace and goodness in your life. That's what he has for us. Here's the big idea as we close. Joy is possible when Jesus is primary and everything else is secondary. That's when joy is really possible. Anybody here ever had a season of life where you know you got your priorities all mixed up? It's kind of like work over family maybe too much, or spending over savings. Too much time with the friends, not enough with the spouse, whatever. We got our priorities kind of turned around. What happens when you go that way for too long? You really kind of begin to unravel. Things get messy. They get unraveled. They're not as they should be. And so we look at our priorities every now and then, and we try to readjust them and bring them back. If there is a true lack of joy in a person's life, in your life here this morning, the presence of God, maybe he's lost priority and other things have crept in. And we still, love him in theory in some things, but he wants to be priority. And listen, the reason the scriptures are replete with make me first, God is like, I want to be above every other God. Love me with all your heart. Everything else comes secondary. It's not because he's got this huge empty ego that he needs people to fill. It's because he is the creator and he knows how his creation works the best. How many of you can do a Rubik's Cube? Like you can actually do one of those things, right? If you can, you're a little odd. Because you're smarter than the rest of us. I can't ever do one. But you know who never, ever has a problem doing the Rubik's Cube? It's the guy who invented it. That's how God is with us. He knows how we work best. He knows our longing to experience life and passion and purpose and significance. He knows that we have a longing for that. He's saying, I want to put that in order. Keep me first. And then these other things, which are good things, I'll help you know how to do those in a good way. And you won't be demanding from the creation to give you fulfillment. You'll get it from the Creator. I had a conversation with somebody this week. It was based on last week. Last week, he came up to me after the message, a friend of many of ours. I won't share his name, but I did ask him permission to share the story. And he says, Mark, I got to tell you what happened this week. I'm like, all right. So he says he had been in a season where he was really stressed out. I'm going to have Maya and Guy come up. We're going to have a song here in just a second, closing. So he'd been in a season where he was very stressed out, and he was trying to finish his degree, freaking out that a lot of these courses that he took would not be transferable to where he was at school now. And he was ready to start a new job in a great career, but they had to do a background check on him, and he was freaking out about that. He wasn't a big criminal or anything, but he had, like a lot of Los Angelans, I don't know, Angelinos, whatever, people who live in L.A., a lot of parking tickets and stuff like that had happened. And his finances. He was living paycheck to paycheck and a good steward, but his finances, he's looking at everything that things are coming up and what he had to spend on with this extra school and everything, and he was $774 short. And to you, that may not mean like much, but to him, that was, well, I don't have it. I can't pay my rent or whatever else I need to do. And he's stressing about all these different things, and it was like a perfect storm coming at him. And he realized in that time, he said, I realized I had not made God priority. I was making everything else priority in my life. Everything else priority, not him. So I went to the Lord that day, and he prayed, put on some worship music, prayed. He said, God, here it is. I am sorry. I have made you not even second place, but like third, fourth, fifth, way down there. And that whether I get this job, whether anything else happens, I want you to know I am yours. I am yours. I love you. And he just spent time in worship, giving this over to God. Later that day, he goes to the school to meet with the counselor to find out what's going to go on with the courses and the classes. He's thinking it's going to be like a year, then he might not get the job. And while he's waiting in the waiting room, he gets a call. And so he gets a call, and it's financial aid for the school. They say, hey, you got another check here. You need to come by and pick it up. We've been holding it for you. He says, oh, no, I thought I got all my checks. He goes, no, there's one more. He says, how much is it for? She says, $774. Yeah. God is fun. $774. He's like, what? So he hangs up, and then he checks his phone. There's a voicemail. Voicemail comes in. He listens. This all happened like in the scope of, he said, like 15, 20 minutes. Voicemail comes. He listens to the voicemail. Voicemail is his new employer says, hey, everything cleared. Your background check came in clear. You start tomorrow. He's like, no, this is great. And then he goes in and meets with the counselor, and the counselor says, I don't know what you're stressing about. You're fine. You're going to be done with this in like a couple months. You're good to go. It's all golden. 15, 20 minutes. Now listen, Don't you wish life was always that way? I mean, I told him, I said, I want you to start praying for me. If that's the kind of results you get. So life is not always that way. Sometimes God does those things. You know, I told him, I said, what did you feel like your Heavenly Father was trying to say to you? Because it wasn't just a neat event. What's he saying to you through that? And for him, it was the message of, I got you. Keep me first. Even the scriptures talk about, make him priority. Seek first. Not in theory. All of it. And then all these things shall be added unto you. And I know that's a discipline. I don't know about you, I get off track on that, and I'm in ministry full time, where I start getting prioritized with other stuff, and I'm like, Lord, I'm sorry, come back. And it's something we call ourselves to. And the reason is because he does want to give us that joy. He does want to, the sustainable one in our lives. So whether it's he does a $774 exact thing for you and just tickles you and makes you feel all good, or he promises, I'm your comforter and I'm going to go through this with you. We can know the joy as we make him primary in our lives. It's a promise. It's a promise. We're going to have a closing song right now. And I want you to just take a moment where you're at and think about that. Is he priority? Maybe restart that this morning and just give him the honor that he is due. And then we'll come back up and close.